Hi, say today we're going to be learning about the basic grammar that we need to do for the text I want us to read. Although I do want you to pause this video once and go down to the description below if you're watching this on YouTube to try to listen to the story once before I continue. I'll give you about 5 seconds. Okay, so basically, once you've listened to it, it's basically you kind of start getting like understanding like the pronunciation and whatnot. And then I split this into 15 phrases in a specific format, like we learned last lesson, where we know that the adjective comes before the noun, and we also know that there's particles after various things. And yeah, this is kind of the orders, and the verbs always come at the very end. So yeah, this is how it looks like split up. We'll get back to this a little bit later. We're probably just gonna switch back and forth. You might have noticed here, in phrase 11 and 14, I believe, you have shibiranka, and you might be wondering what that is. Um, so a quick Google search, you will find that it's just basically a sign on a usually a pole or of some sorts. Um, and basically you can split it up into two words, Shibi and Ranka. Shibi is one name for the Northern Star, and in this situation, it refers to the Northern Star god, and Ranka is like a carriage for a god. And in some regions, you can see on the if you look on the left tab on the under the quick Google search that I did on the top right, it's the same text as the ones written in some regions. Um, Tinkuan Shifuku Shibiranka. That's basically where Tinkuan Shifuku refers to the luck god. In some areas, they might say Tinkan or even Tenkan even. So yeah, uh, and it's kind of very difficult to explain. It's a traditional architectural practice to like in some very important places uh to like make sure that bad luck doesn't like enter the buildings and like enter people's lives kind of thing. And it's done during a thing called munyagi. Where was or munagi, yeah. It depends on the region. Yeah, they might say munagi. Yeah, so in phrase 14 he says munagi suru tuchi. So yeah, that's how it when it is done. Since this is not a cultural class, I'll just skip over this a bit, and we'll just mainly focus on grammar today because I really want to focus on the text next week, since it ended up being a lot longer than I expected to be. So I really apologize, but we're just gonna stick with the grammar this week around, and then not next week, but next time in July 8th. That's what we're going to do. Okay, so the first one is okay or nke. Um, there's it's basically like two towards on, like for example jisan wa sankai. Technically you can remove the n here, but yeah, sometimes there's also kai, remove the n here as well. That's basically like to uh grandpa grandma. The context of phrase two is like, oh, I asked something to grandpa grandma kind of thing. And then here we go, phrase. And then there's also a lot of things like itanke, which is like on a board, but technically not on top of something, so it can mean like on and whatnot. And then for like phrase 11, it's shibiran kaike. But like you might be wondering why there's if you listen to the audio too, if you go back to wherever matches phrase 11, if you have the video open up on a different tab, it's basically there's this e here. Like it sounds like there's an e here, shibiran kanke, because like here it's very difficult to pronounce like shibiran kanke. Like you can, but like it's more natural to say like shibiran kanke. Also, yeah. To set, although technically there isn't an e here, you're not supposed to have an e here. Um, it just kind of it might sound like that to a couple of speakers, but that's just that. I think that's about it for this section. So I guess I'll continue moving on. Okay. So there's kotu and there's yashiga. Um, as a standalone, the full thing is yashiga. However, when it's next to a verb, for example, oh, whoops, that they did not mean to do that. Chichan, which means I like heard. If you like drop the n and then add the shiga or kutu, you have to do that. And oh yeah, kutu technically is also yakutu. If you're just gonna do a standalone, I forgot to put that in the slides. Oh well, that's on me. But yeah, technically yakutu and yashiga are like the default forms, and oh, and so, but when you're adding it to the phrase and not as like a standalone, it's like it's like it's not instead of like a beginning of the sentence, it might just be attended in the middle or the end of the phrase or sentence. And you just remove the n and add the you remove the ya from here. You move the n from the original text, like chan. Remove the n, remove the ya from yes, yakutu, and you just get chakutu, and that's that. Okay, okay. All right. So, so that's it on kutu and shiga. The only difference being because so or but. However, these are obviously conjunctions, and they are very often used. So I highly suggest you memorize this. There's a lot of examples of nu. If you go back to there's a lot of hold up, where we go, ugushi nu, osama nu. There's a lot of munagi nu, like munagi nu. Like there's a lot of okay, there's a lot of nu, right? So ugushi kun nu, like ugushi nu is like hold up. It's basically gushku is basically castle, and is like slightly formalized variation, and nu is just it's like something of the castle, like something whenever you see that up, yeah, here. Okay, sorry, I'm switching back and forth between slides. So yeah, I think that's pretty straightforward. It's just like usually it's like possession of. Sometimes it means like out of, like within a group. Well, I'll get to that. Just for now, just memorize it as like mainly possession. It's technically the genitive case for you linguistic nerds, but yeah, that's that. Okay. So there's ku u a, and then that's added by with a ri nu or ma, right? And so the overview shows the chart. Basically, they're basically demonstratives. They're like this of this, and then here's there, that kind of thing. If you want to go slightly, if you want to look at a quick short that goes a little more in depth in it, and if you're watching it on YouTube, I'd highly suggest you check up either in the description, or I probably might have put in a timestamp on the top right corner of this video. You can open that up in a new tab, watch that for like a minute. It's a quick short, not nothing too much. I briefly explained it, I think, and basically, well, I keep switching slides. Anyways, unu uri like unuirai Unukamimun. Kamimun is like food. So that like this kind of, it's like this food using nu because it's like this, like, and then you have food. It's like uri nu, but like short. It's like uri nu, unu kind of thing. If you know what I mean. It's like a lot shorter. I guess you guys in English have it too with the apostrophe s. Okay, so it's very easy to spot the past tense in Uchinaaguchi, partly because it's simply just ta or some modification ta cha da. Well, da can sometimes be ra, and then ta and ta and cha. So and then I'm just adding in parentheses because sometimes it can change. Like when you add the kutu or shiga, for example, that just drops. So ta is a pretty good indicator, and any variation of ta, like ta, ta, cha, cha, or da, or da, usually indicates that it could be. It's a pretty high indicator that it's probably the past tense. The main exception being like sunsan and satan would be negative past. But like generally, that's why there's the asterisk, because the ta can also change as well as like the chart below. I should go back to let's start from for example cha chicha kutu instead of chichun, which is the base form. It's a cha, like, and then hicha shiga ugaso dang. And not it this just doesn't the ta rule doesn't really is also applied to adjectives, and unlike verbs, it's always ta. So for example, if you go, I believe, where was it? I remember somewhere I saw. Oh, okay. Here's a good one. We have the word for delicious or tasty, which is masan, and in adjectives, when you like move the sa and the ta away, and you insert a ta, that's always the past tense. So this ta is a pretty good indicator that it was really delicious. Juni juni masatante, right? So it was like genuinely delicious kind of thing. Okay. I hope that makes sense. Right now we're just gonna strive for like basic comprehension kind of thing. If you can like spot these patterns quickly. Even after this lesson on the video, I highly suggest you go back to like the beginning of the video where I like slowly move towards the slides where I like briefly show you phrase 1 to 15 and see if you can figure out any of these grammatical patterns. Okay. Okay, here's another good example when the becomes a different thing. For example, when a verb becomes an adjective, you usually use the root part. This is just phrases, a screenshot from phrases 11 to 14. All of these at the very end here with the finalized root is a very good indicator of uh it doesn't always, because sometimes there could be like a noun and then you have a root and that means something completely different. But for if you have a verb and then and then becomes oh yeah, that's a very good example of ta becoming ta ru instead of ta like kuncha ta ru instead of kuncha, like yeah, kuncha ta ru, yeah, that's instead of kuncha ta but because it became adjectivized, like edified, like passive-ified adjective, it just became that. Okay, I hope this makes sense. I'm so sorry if I'm going very fast. Okay. And in Kunigami, there's a lot of times where the k at the very beginning of words uh in Uchinaguchi ends up becoming an H in Kunigami. For example, in phrase 7, you have the word hara, which is from, but uh, b- but in Uchinaaguchi, it will be kara instead of hara. Okay? And another good example is the word, it's very commonly used as an example, this one, so it's pretty generic, but we have in Uchinaguchi we have this word kachun, which means to write. In Nakijin, that would be hachun, right? That's it. And there's and then there's the word d, or like d, uh hold up, like yan d, yatan d here at the verbs and conjunctions area, phrase 11 and 15 respectively. Sochan d, uh yeah. um there, it can probably also be, yeah, that's one thing, I guess. But that in this case, it usually just means like there's like a lot of ways you can translate it, like obviously. And so, oh whoops, this T, oh, that's a typo here, it should be a D here, my bad. That one too is, I'll fix it later for next class, but basically you, oh, my bad, I did not mean to go to that slide. Let me go back. Okay, here. In this scenario, it means like for the reason of, and yeah, that's why in many contexts, if you go back to the example, it's basically for the reason of Sasukin dinukutu yan. Therefore, and that is why I kind of think at the very end of phrase 15, like the D kind of makes kind of like commas or pauses, I guess, in a sense, because it's like, oh, it's that's why, or it's for that reason. It's like for the reason of this, of the previous, of the aforementioned thing, kind of thing. Of course, there are like other usages of this conjunction or particle, I guess would be a more accurate word. Is, and yeah, that is that. And sorry for going through way too much grammar. I am deeply sorry for all this cramming, and I really want to get into the text next time we meet up, but I did think we needed to go through all this, so that's why it's just what it is for now. Okay, I'll just not give you too much for vocabulary, I guess. These are probably pretty good to know for next class. Yeah, that's it's a pretty basic story. I hope we can go through it line by line next week. Maybe if we do have time, I could probably also do a version not from the Izena Kunigami, and instead go use like one very remote island to like the far west of the main island of Okinawa, which Aguni, which has their own unique variation of Uchinaguchi. I think would be very good for comparison. When I do that, I will be sure to link that video below. And as always, I do not intend for the story to be like I do not intend for like to infringe on copyright. This is just for teaching purposes. So just making that abundantly clear for those who are like trying to copyright claim me. or something. I don't know, maybe YouTube being weird sometimes. And yeah, my homework for you guys, for those who are taking it in my classes, just be sure to just write a couple of sentences, at least the minimum here. Try demonstrating your knowledge of particles, whatnot, and yeah, and matayasai.